When Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his country is a post-national state and has no core identity, no one should be surprised when some start asking if Canada is even a country. But the identity crisis facing Canada is not only multifaceted, it's serious and could one day have a direct impact on the United States. Canada is in the midst of, as one writer put it, a civilizational experiment that's transforming a Western nation into a post-Western nation. And this revolution is centered around the cult of diversity.
Your Canada.
Here's one version of Justin Trudeau's post-national, post-Western Canada, transformed by diversity.
Oh, Canada, you stand for everybody.
The question is not whether Canada should welcome immigrants. The question, according to Toronto Sun columnist and SiriusXM Canada host Anthony Furey, is whose values should win the day.
In Canada right now, it's labeled bizarrely xenophobic and anti-immigrant, and they throw around terms like racism to no end. If you simply say, I'd like us all to integrate here and live together in a compatible way.
Throughout their histories, both Canada and America have welcomed immigrants of all backgrounds. But Canada, rather than being a melting pot like the U.S., has said that it is a mosaic of many cultures. The problem begins when the Canadian mosaic includes more and more radical Islamists who favor undemocratic values under Sharia law. Prime Minister Trudeau welcomed almost 50,000 refugees from the Middle East in 2016 alone, and has even welcomed returning ISIS fighters, saying in an interview that they could be a powerful voice.
And a lot of people, probably the silent majority, are saying, I'm unhappy with this, including new immigrants who came to Canada, whether it's a year ago or a decade or 3 decades ago, who say, no, I came to Canada for a reason, because I wanted Canadian values and I was escaping values in other countries.
One immigrant who would like more Canadian values is pro-Western Muslim Tahir Gora, founder of Tag TV in Toronto, a network with a large international audience. He's also a co-author of Submission, The Danger of Political Islam to Canada, with a warning to America.
I moved to this beautiful country because of its Canadian culture. People like me escaped Pakistan or Middle East or the Muslim world, came to Canada, and some went to United States with the hope that they will be left alone by those radical Islamists. But now we see those Islamists roaming around in this part of the world.
Tariq Fatah is a journalist, writer, and founder of the Muslim Canadian Congress. An immigrant from Pakistan and a proud Canadian, Fatah says the Canadian left, which in his words is sinking in white guilt, now accepts and even celebrates undemocratic radical Islamic beliefs and practices. He likens it to a circus.
It considers radical Islam as a phenomena that needs to be embraced because it is so curious. So we as Muslims are considered as circus animals. We need to perform in a way. And the white left liberal feminist class would sit in ringside seats and say, how lovely. Just look at that monkey jump up and down. Or that elephant stood up on his 2 feet. Honey, did you see that? Oh, it's breathtaking.
Another facet of Canada's identity crisis can be seen in the growing trend of what are called land acknowledgements.
We want to begin by acknowledging the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples on which Wilfrid Laurier University's campuses sit.
Land acknowledgements are recited daily on campuses and in schools across Canada, and they essentially declare that Canada is an occupier.
We respectfully acknowledge the territory
in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk and the island of Newfoundland,
as the ancestral homelands
of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk.
These continue even though a poll this year found that most Canadians do not believe Native peoples should have a special status and that the government should stop apologizing for past wrongs. The culture that is under fire here is traditional Canadian Christian culture. Ottawa resident Alexandra Belair grew up behind the Iron Curtain in communist Czechoslovakia, and she sees some disturbing parallels between life under communism and life in politically correct Canada. What do you say to someone who says, that's preposterous, I can say whatever I want in Canada? How can you compare it to the Soviet world?
But you can't say anything you want. Because I was a daughter of a political dissident, teachers would take the time to berate me and say bad things about me in front of the whole classroom, because that way they were proving they weren't showing favoritism to the dissident's daughter, right? Now my friend's daughter was in school and she was being shamed for being too Christian. How's that different? How is that different? She was being shamed for feeling very patriotic Canadian. How is that different for being shamed for being a dissident's daughter?
There's a saying here that the world needs more Canada. But if current trends continue, the world is going to get less of Canada, as Canadian identity is swallowed up in a left-wing multicultural experiment. Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Toronto and Ottawa.